Today on the Locked On Blues podcast, I'm going to be talking about some of the exit interviews given by Craig Berube and Doug Armstrong. Got some news about Brayden Schenn's various injuries. Got some updates on David Perron's potential re-signing with the St. Louis Blues. Updates on Vladimir Tarasenko. Jordan Binnington told his story regarding the Nazem Kadri water bottle incident. Lots to get into there. And then second half of the episode, I'm going to give my thoughts on the teams remaining in the Stanley Cup playoffs and whether or not the Tampa Bay Lightning will three-peat this year. So I'm going to give him my predictions for that. Busy episode. Make sure you stay tuned.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Locked On Blues podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and your number one source for daily Blues content. I'm your host, Josh Hyman, and like I said, we got a busy episode for you guys today. Lots to talk about, lots to get into. Before I get into any of it, though, I want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you guys by Bet Online. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And I wanted to thank everyone out there who makes Locked On Blues your first listen because we're free and available on all podcast platforms. Now, before I get into the hockey talk, this is a pretty notable episode. If you guys missed last episode, Monday's episode, Tommy is stepping away from the podcast. He is no longer my co-host. I got full reins of the show now, only me. And this is kind of the first episode of that. Obviously, the content's going to be the same. I've done plenty of solo episodes in the past, so it's just going to be more of that. But the one thing I do want to say is it's going to be probably the audio, it's going to be a little different. I'm not too familiar with the audio editing. Tommy's been doing most of that. So as I learn the ropes and get a handle of that, the quality might dip a little bit before I get up to full speed. So please let me know. Shoot me a DM on Twitter or anything like that if you notice any issues with the audio or anything like that. Like I said, I'm learning the ropes. I'm doing my best, but again, I'm kind of learning on the fly as I go. So this episode especially is going to be my first attempt at going through the audio and editing all of that. So definitely let me know if you guys notice anything, and I'll work on fixing it. And also, just let me know any feedback you might have. I'm going to be, like I said, taking the show in a pretty similar direction to what I had with Tommy. But since it's just me, I'm probably going to be trying to get guests on here more often and just switching things up a little bit, keeping it fresh, because it's going to be a little interesting trying to sit here and talk to myself 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week. So that being said, though, looking forward to doing so today because we have so much to talk about. Berube and Armstrong both gave their exit interviews along with Brayden Schenn, David Perron, all those guys, and there's so much to get into. The first thing I want to talk about is Brayden Schenn. Brayden Schenn's a guy that had a disappointing regular season, especially there towards the end, and then the playoffs he was pretty poor as well. He said it himself, he's not trying to make excuses. However, he might have a pretty darn good excuse considering he had 3 different sets of broken ribs throughout the season that he was dealing with. We knew of 2 of them, I believe. I think he had 1, and then his brother gave him a cross check, which kind of re-aggravated it. That was a couple months ago in the regular season. And I guess there was another one mixed in there. So he was clearly dealing with that throughout the playoffs, and then a torn oblique as well. So Brayden Schenn was just absolutely going through it, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's not the only injury Blues players were dealing with, and we might just find out more in the coming days. But I mean, from the perspective of Brayden Schenn, I mean, he's always been a streaky guy. I remember, I think it was the Cup run where he went like 9 or 10 straight games without scoring a goal, and then, scored one when they did the monkey off his back celebration. So he's a guy that when he gets going, he plays well, he plays hot, but when he's not on his game, it's definitely noticeable. I think he was still making a lot of impacts. Like he was throwing his body around a lot, making good physical plays, and definitely still a net positive out there, but would have liked to see more out of him offensively in that playoff push this year. And again, I'd like to think that, he wanted to do more, but at the same time, dealing with broken ribs, first of all, just hurts like heck, but also probably makes it harder to catch your breath and harder to skate hard, all that sort of thing. Understandable. And then obviously a torn oblique is going to be extremely painful. Only so much you can do there. It's going to affect pretty much every aspect of your game. So I'm not too concerned about Brayden Schenn's lack of production. I'm looking forward to seeing how he can bounce back in the regular season, given a full offseason to rest and recover from those injuries. Because he, like I've been talking about, he was very banged up, and being able to, get him back to 100%, get him back to full strength is going to do wonders for this team. And I'm sure he's hungry to produce as well. I think he's definitely disappointed with how the regular season went and also how the playoffs went. He said it himself. He said something like, I have to produce more, no excuses, regardless of how injured I am, whatever, what have you. So he's definitely a guy that I think is going to have a bounce back next season. And, getting fully healthy is going to be huge for him. He's been an impact player for this team consistently when he's fully healthy. Great goal scorer, great physical player. And I expect more of the same out of him next season. Now, in this second segment, I'll be talking about some guys that are going to be potentially, most likely, returning next season. I'm talking about David Perron, talking about Vladimir Tarasenko, talking about Jordan Binnington, talking about Rosen as well, because he signed a contract extension with the St. Louis Blues earlier today. So I'm going to be getting into all that before getting into my picks for the Stanley Cup. Who's going to come out of the Western Conference, who's going to come out of the Eastern Conference, all that fun stuff. But before I get into any of that, if you guys have a hot take on who's going to come out of either conference, maybe you think the Rangers are going to upset the Lightning, maybe you think the Edmonton Oilers are going to win the Stanley Cup, or maybe you think the Lightning are going to three-peat. Either way, if you want to put your money where your mouth is, check out Bet Online. Our partners at Bet Online continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. You can find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. Bet Online is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. So head to their website today, betonline.net, or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Bet Online, where the game starts. And I'll be right back with the second half of today's episode. Okay, so let's start this segment with some more of the Jordan Binnington drama talk. He gave his post-season, whatever, end of season press conference, and he talked about the Nazem Kadri incident. And he had a couple points that I wanted to touch on. First of all, I just want to go over the main quotable line where he says he felt like being able to throw the water bottle at Nazem Kadri is a God-given opportunity. That's just funny. That's just a funny quote. Everyone's up in arms, like, oh, he's so childish, so immature. What the heck is wrong with this guy? And you know what? Is it a little immature and childish? Yeah. Is it funny? Yeah. How mad can you be? It was harmless. Obviously, like I said, it sets a dangerous precedent, and you don't want to see that, trend continue. You don't want to see it snowball to something worse. But at the end of the day, it's Jordan Binnington being Jordan Binnington. Love him or hate him, he's got a side of him that is a little bit of a sore loser, a little bit of an overly competitive player. And we've seen it in the past when he starts his fake fights or swings a stick at guys, whatever it may be. He's clearly shown that he's got a little bit of Brad Marchand in him when it comes to trying to be like an instigator. And, obviously if you're a fan of one of any of the 31 other teams in the NHL, you're not going to love it. But as a Blues fan, it kind of just makes you chuckle. He has yet to, really do something that is concerning. He hasn't, gone after anybody. He hasn't hurt anybody. He hasn't pulled off anything dirty. It's just consistently been these Brad Marchand-esque, I'm not gonna break the rules directly, but I'm gonna pull some stuff that's gonna be on ESPN for the next few days. And any team needs something like that. It fires the team up, and unfortunately, the team wasn't able to completely rally around him as a result. But I mean, he's got a strong personality, and that strong personality is probably what gave him the confidence to lead the Blues to a Stanley Cup in 2019. And, I would much prefer a Jordan Binnington that, gets riled up and swings sticks and fake punches people than a reserved, quiet goalie that doubts himself and isn't confident, because I think he relies on that personality and relies on that confidence to propel him. And that being said, I think he's so frustrated with the way that his season ended. He talked about that, and he even said he doesn't think Nazem Kadri was trying to hurt him or anything like that. Jordan himself said it was just an unfortunate play. They're both going to the net hard, him and Rosen. And there's really nothing you can do in that situation. And I give a lot of props to him for that. It would have been really easy for him to come out and say, yeah, Nas is a dirty player. He has a history in this league, and he has a history of hurting guys on our team. I was pissed that he did that. No, he came out and told it like it is. He said, you know what? It's an unfortunate play. I was frustrated. I couldn't find the recycling bin, which hilarious again. And he threw a water bottle at him. Not even because he thought Nazem Kadri was a super dirty player and was out to get him, just because he was pissed that he got injured. And you know what? That's understandable. If I got my knee blown out by a player on another team and I'm walking down the hallway with a water bottle, I mean, you never know. You might give it a little toss. Jokes aside, though, like it was a very level-headed response from Binnington, and unfortunately, the media is not going to talk about that. The media is just going to run with the whole, oh, Jordan Binnington's immature, he's childish. Can't believe he called it a God-given opportunity, and they're going to completely ignore the part when he said, yeah, I don't think Naz was out to get me. I don't think he was pulling anything dirty. I think it was just an unfortunate play with two guys going to the net hard. No, you're not going to see that in any headlines or anything like that. The only thing people are going to be talking about is this stupid water bottle incident that snowballed out of control and got way bigger than it needed to be. But whatever. I was very impressed with Jordan Binnington's comments. Knowing him, I wouldn't have been surprised if she went out there and doubled down on the Kadri thing and just said like, oh yeah, it was a dirty play. He's a dirty player. I think he had no problem taking me out of the game. He didn't say that. He could have, but he didn't. He said, yeah, he plays hard, he plays physical, and it led to an unfortunate result. So, I mean, all things considered, I don't think you can be too upset with the way that it turned out. Obviously, like I said, you're going to be seeing this in the media. You're going to be hearing about this every single time that Nazem Kadri goes against the St. Louis Blues until the end of time. And don't need to get into it, but the events that followed with Kadri obviously are extremely disappointing, disheartening, whatever. But that being said, it sounds like Jordan Binnington is, moving past it and isn't really going to hold too much ill will. Obviously, I think, next season, Nazem Kadri is going down on a breakaway. Binnington's going to be a little extra motivated to make the save, of course. And hey, like I said, he plays off of that emotion well. So I expect Binnington to really thrive off of those if Kadri stays with the Avs or wherever he goes, to really thrive off of those matchups in seasons to come. And that being said, though, speaking of seasons to come, there are going to be some Blues players that are questionable whether or not they're going to be here. First guy, I want to cover quickly, Rosen, got signed to a 2-year, two-way extension. Look, he wasn't great. I don't think that anyone's going to argue that. But that being said, he was probably playing a little bit over his head. He showed flashes of being a pretty good defenseman. I think he would be a good guy to sort of have in that extra defenseman role, maybe like that 8th defenseman role, in a similar role to where he was this year, where if you deal with a lot of injuries or whatever, you bring Rosen up. He definitely played more than he should have this season. Like, I think he was used in a role that was bigger than what the team expected of him. And I think that's evident considering the fact that they gave him a 2-way contract, expecting him to spend a majority of his time in the AHL. So I don't think you can really fault Rosen for his play this year. He was never really brought in to be, a top 4 defenseman or even a top 6 defenseman consistently. And he definitely had his moments where he struggled. And you can definitely look at some goals that were scored against the Blues and say, man, if Rosen was in better position or if he didn't turn the puck over or whatever, they would have, whatever. He's not the reason why they got eliminated in the playoffs. He wasn't great by far, but he's a serviceable defenseman. He'll be good to have down there for depth in the AHL, and I'm happy with that. Moving on to another guy, a lot of rumors about is Vladimir Tarasenko. Now, Tommy and I both talked about that maybe it's time to sort of trim some of the fat off of this forward or defensive group, and one guy that would make, unfortunately, some sense to do that with is Vladimir Tarasenko. He obviously, like we all know, requested a trade last offseason. Obviously didn't happen. Had a pretty strong regular season. Inconsistent playoffs, but he was big for the Blues when they needed him to be. He sparked that comeback against Colorado in Game 5. Yeah, in Game 5. And obviously had that hat trick in one period against the Minnesota Wild. So he's still a guy that could be a superstar on this team. He's still a guy that can drive the play when he's engaged. Didn't have the best postseason outside of those moments, but still, he's a guy that has been the face of this team or one of the faces of this team for a long time. And I believe the quote from Doug Armstrong was, "We're not worried about Vladdy for next year." So it sounds like there is no, trade request that's being brought up, and obviously doesn't sound like they're exploring any sort of trade or anything with him. So as of right now, I expect Vladimir Tarasenko to be back in a Blues jersey next season. Obviously after that, with his contract expiring, who knows? But looks like he'll be back next year. The final guy that I want to talk about in this segment is David Perron. David Perron is a UFA this year. However, it seems pretty apparent that there is mutual interest from both sides to have him come back and play for the Blues. I think that's a no-brainer. He's left and come back here 2 separate times, something like that. And still like is up there on a lot of different leaderboards in Blues history, especially come playoffs. He was the Blues' best player in the playoffs this season, at least offensively. Great veteran presence, plays his heart out all the time. Probably at this rate will retire a member of the St. Louis Blues, as he should. And it looks like, again, he'll be back next season. I expect him to be at a discounted rate, which, to be fair, he was making $4 million this year, which is probably less than he deserved, considering how much he produced offensively, especially in the playoffs. But that being said, I expect him to come back for a little bit less money. He is getting up there in age, in his mid-30s. So I would expect maybe like a 2-year deal around 2-3 million-ish, or maybe around that 4 million that he's making now. Should be a great guy to bring back in the locker room. Like I said, huge locker room guy, but also just great on the ice as well. So yeah, David Perron, all signs are pointing to him being back with the St. Louis Blues next season. That being said, though, that is it for Blues talk. In this third and final segment coming up, I'm going to be talking about the conference finals games, including the wild game last night between the Edmonton Oilers and Colorado Avalanche, where neither team was playing any sort of defense, and then tonight's game between the New York Rangers and Tampa Bay Lightning. So I'll give my thoughts on both of those series when I come back. Make sure you stay tuned. All right, so let's start out west with the team that defeated the St. Louis Blues, the Colorado Avalanche. I think, what was the final score? 7-4, 7-5, I think it was. Let's check real quick. Let's get some real time. 8-6. Okay. 8-6. We saw 4 different goalies in the game. Mike Smith got pulled due to being bad, and Darcy Kemper had some sort of upper body injury that he dealt with. So Pavel F. I'm not going to get that last name, so I'm not even going to try. Backup goalie for Colorado he played all right. 3 goals allowed on 21 shots. But the thing that I want to talk about is Mikko Koskinen. Now, Mike Smith, atrocious for the Edmonton Oilers in the playoffs. Connor McDavid has pretty much and Leon Draisaitl have willed them to the Western Conference Finals. Mike Smith has tried his hardest to get them to lose games, and he did so last night. He allowed a lot of goals. He allowed a lot of backbreaking goals. Like Colorado would score. I think Colorado tied it up at one point. Right at the end of the first, Colorado tied it up with like 20 seconds left, and then they gave up a goal to Cale Makar 9 seconds later. Now, that's not necessarily Mike Smith's fault. Cale Makar went bar down. It was a crazy nice goal, but still, it's goals like that really can take you out of a series, and take you out of a game. Like, again, they tied it up again. Or no, they got within 1 again. And it's like, I'm looking at this, like this goals list is ridiculous. You got so many different goals scored. I mean, 8-6, 14 goals in a game is almost, I would say, unheard of for the playoffs. We did have a 15-goal game a few weeks ago, 9-6. So this series is going to be crazy. Besides Tampa, because Tampa's probably the best offense, defense, and goaltending in the entire league. But I mean, 2 of the highest powered offenses, definitely the 2 highest powered offenses in the West, with the Blues coming in at a close third, in the Avalanche and the Oilers. And we saw it on display last night, 8-6 final score. But Mikko Koskinen was really good for the Oilers once he came in. He only allowed 1 goal, which, I mean, all things considered, the way that the game went is very impressive. He did get the loss, which is a little unfortunate for him because he allowed 1 of the 8 goals that the Avalanche scored. But still, I mean, who knows if the Avs or if the Oilers can get better goaltending, they could very well make their a Stanley Cup this year. Now, that being said, which of these teams is going to have the pleasure of losing to the Tampa Bay Lightning is the common consensus. And I honestly, that's a consensus that makes sense. The Tampa Bay Lightning are an absolute wagon. But that being said, a team that can score 6 goals in a playoff game, or 8 if you're the Colorado Avalanche, you can't sleep on that. Like, yeah, Andrei Vasilevsky might be the best hockey player on the planet right now. The Lightning defense is great. Their offense is even better. But still, these teams have very high-powered offenses, and Colorado proved in the series against St. Louis that they can play solid defense when they need to. The only question that I have there is their goaltending. I think Darcy Kemper got pretty exposed in that Blues series. I called him elite before the series, and I regret that immensely. I thought it was a little bit different than the Grubauer situation, where Grubauer was just playing well because the team in front of him was playing well. I thought Darcy Kemper was a little bit better than that. He wasn't. at least in that series, he was pretty exposed. Like I said, he was probably the worst goalie in the series, even including Villiuso. So, I mean, if the Oilers, or if the Avalanche can get consistent goaltending out of either one of their goaltenders, I think they have a shot, but you can't be allowing 6 goals in a game if you want to win a Stanley Cup. So, I mean, it's what they need. They need consistent goaltending. I'm not convinced that they're going to get it. On the other hand, the Edmonton Oilers probably need the same thing. Mike Smith, I don't think is that guy. I don't think Mike Smith can win you a Stanley Cup. But who knows? With Connor McDavid, anything is possible. He had some big goals, or had at least one big goal in that game. Let's see. Yeah, he had one goal to kind of cut it close in the second period there. So, anything's possible when you have a guy like Connor McDavid on your team. But, it's going to be a good series. I'm interested to see if the offense kind of calms down for both of these teams and we see a little bit more of what we saw in the Blue series, where the games aren't as aren't as high scoring. Obviously it's still offensively dominated, but the defense shows up when they need to. And if Colorado or Edmonton can get in touch with their defense as well as their offense, they're going to be a sneaky team. That being said, though, the Tampa Bay Lightning are friggin' ridiculous. I haven't even mentioned the New York Rangers yet. I would love to see the New York Rangers make some noise. They have probably the second best, not probably, they definitely have the second best goaltender remaining in the playoffs in Igor Shesterkin. It just so happens that they're matched up against the Tampa Bay Lightning, who have won 2 Stanley Cups in a row and look like they're poised to win their third. It's going to be tough for the New York Rangers, but they've made it this far. They faced some adversity against the Carolina Hurricanes in their last round and really buckled down and played well after that. They kind of look like the New York Rangers probably look like the most traditional, Stanley Cup winning team, like from years past, like besides the Lightning, who are just super teams. Like if you look back to the St. Louis Cup or the Washington Capitals Cup, the New York Rangers kind of have that going for them right now. They're a good regular season team, and then they've kind of just scratched and clawed their way through the playoffs and had some adversity and had some tough times. But yet find themselves in the conference finals. And, like I said, in years past, that would probably traditionally be the recipe for success. You're getting hot at the right time. You're playing well. You're getting good goaltending. You're getting good offense, and you're getting good defense. However, you're running into the Tampa Bay Lightning this year, which, you can only do so much. You can only play so well. You got to play probably, 7 games of perfect hockey if you're going to beat the Lightning. I would expect the series to go 7 if the Rangers are going to win it. Obviously, my money is on the Lightning. You can't bet against them. I feel like, I was saying at the beginning of the year, like, I don't know if the Lightning have it in them to go, back to back to back. The fatigue is going to set in. You've essentially played a whole extra regular season almost at this point in terms of playoff games. But that being said, they're still here and they've looked incredible on their way here. Obviously, they went to 7 against Toronto in the first round, but that's because it's Toronto and they're pretty much guaranteed to go 7 games in the first round every year until the sun explodes. And then, round 2, they allowed freaking 3 goals all series against one of the best teams in the league in the Florida Panthers. So, like, it really looks like the Lightning are unstoppable once again. But who knows? Maybe the Rangers can give them a run for their money. I think the Rangers are a really good team. And like I said, in any other year where they're not up against the Tampa Bay Lightning, I would honestly pencil them in as the Stanley Cup favorite. Just based on what I've seen out of Colorado's defense, I don't know if that's sustainable to win a Stanley Cup. But who knows? With the offense that Colorado and Edmonton are playing, anything can happen. I'm looking forward to it. That being said, that is all the time I have for you guys today. So make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube and hit that notification bell. That way, whenever we upload a new episode to YouTube, you'll be the first to know. Leave us a comment. Or I guess leave me a comment. I keep saying us. I miss you, Tommy. Leave a comment. I'll try to interact with those as much as I can. I'm getting a lot more comments lately, which is awesome, but also making it a little bit harder for me to respond to them all. So, it is what it is. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Hyman NHL. You can follow all of Locked On Blues on socials, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok at Locked On Blues. That being said, thank you guys so much for listening. And as always, let's go Blues.